can see there. So, are there reasons that one should not become a software engineer? Absolutely, there are. And this video, I'm going to discuss them. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, what is up, everyone? So, firstly, just a little introduction for those who don't know me. I am a former criminology major. I pivoted to computer science about 3 years ago. Now, I think we're coming up on 4 years. And now I professionally work as a software engineer at a Silicon Valley tech company, and I have about 2 years of professional software engineering experience at this point. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about, why you should not become a software engineer. So I do, software engineering professionally, and then in my spare time, I make fun content like this. So yeah, let's dive right into it. I do have some notes in front of me, so if I'm looking down at any point, I'm just looking at my notes. So yeah, firstly, let's talk about the first reason I have here. So, reason number one, you will need to learn new things daily, right? There's just no way around it. And it's like every single day I go to work, there's something new to learn. Like, I'm not over exaggerating when I say every single day at work, I learn something new. And oftentimes, I learn multiple new things in a day. So, what you learn in college and university and what you learn, through your job experience before, of course, that all still applies. And it's this, treasure of knowledge that you can always refer to. But every single day, you'll be learning more and more. Technology just moves so fast, right? So again, I'm not exaggerating when I say it's daily learning. And one good example of this is how a lot of companies have switched from, having their own on-prem data centers and such to now switching over to the cloud using cloud resources. So then, cloud technology is really hot right now. So whereas before, someone may have needed to know how to use like the actual physical resources, have to go to those data centers. Now people need to be familiar with the cloud, engineers and other technology experts on a team need to be familiar with cloud technologies like AWS, Azure, etc. This was less so the case before, this cloud technology really got hot. And there's going to be other technologies coming up that are going to get hot as well, right? And as those come up, we'll need to learn those as well. So again, daily learning. The next thing, uncertainty is definitely a factor, right? So you'll see like tech YouTubers and just other people in tech talking about like the high salaries, how we're paid well, etc. I talk about it as well. And the thing is, I think there's this kind of balance to strike, right? Uncertainty tends to be where the money and excitement is. So that's like, the Facebook, the Amazons, the Apple, etc. And also just like new startups that are coming on the scene. But they're also uncertain in the sense that they do have layoffs, right? Technology, you'll see these kind of bursts with technology. It kind of goes up, goes down. I think the last recession was around '08, if I'm not mistaken. And that's when technology went down, right? That's when unfortunately people were laid off as well. And we saw it in 2020 during COVID, people were laid off. And even now we're seeing again, tech is coming down a little bit and some companies are doing layoffs. Now, I wouldn't say this is like strictly something to worry about, because if you're someone who's just like, okay, I don't care as much about the excitement, I don't care as much about the money, I just want a stable software engineering job that pays me decently well, there are options, right? Like, for example, the government is a fairly stable option. They, for the most part, won't have layoffs. I guess you can never say 100%. But the point I'm trying to make is those stable options are out there still in software engineering. But if you're getting into software engineering because you kind of like the excitement of like a Facebook, a Apple, or you kind of like the excitement of a startup, which I definitely did. I'm more of a fan of working for a tech company. Then there will be that uncertainty factor there for sure. All right. Next thing I'd like to talk about is the lack of socialization, right? So I work remote. So this may strictly apply to remote. I'm not sure. I've worked remote my whole career as a software engineer. But there are days where I have no socialization except a few Slack messages, right? Now this works fairly well for me because I'm more introverted by nature. So, I have my social life outside of work, and I'm okay with having like a less active socialization life in work. It doesn't bother me too much. But if you're someone who's very extroverted, I think that'll be a very, very tough thing to get used to, or maybe something you may never get used to, right? If you're someone who needs that constant socialization, that's what you enjoy, that's the specific part about, a day-to-day job that you enjoy the most is, the more socialization, the better. I think especially a remote job in software engineering is going to be very tough. Again, there are days where, I send off one Slack message, two Slack message, maybe reply to one or two, and that's it. That's all the socialization for my 8-hour shift. So just something to consider. If you're not someone who's okay with that, this may not be the best career choice. Next, some environments are stressful, right? Now, similar to the uncertainty factor, I think this can be circumvented. And the reason I say that is because all the companies that I've worked for so far, I've never felt that they're, really aggressive with deadlines, or the deadlines were unfair and I was super stressed out of my mind. There were times of stress, but it was healthy stress. Like, okay, I need to get this project done. This is my deadline. But it was never like too stressful for me, or stress in a bad way. With that said, I've definitely heard of companies with very aggressive goals and very aggressive deadlines. I'm not going to bother calling it out. I'm not trying to talk shit in this video, but I've heard of it, and I've heard of talking to people on online forums and etc. I've seen it. People talking about their struggle with this. So those companies are out there. They exist, and this is something that can happen in software engineering. So you could potentially end up working for one of those companies. I've never experienced it myself, but just something to watch out for. That it may happen that you get, your first job, second job, whichever job, and that company has more aggressive deadlines. Of course, stress at work can carry over to other areas of your life. So something to keep in mind and be careful with. Next, tough interview preparation and learning things outside of school. Now, here's what I mean by that. A lot of people, including myself, for getting a tech job, you have to do a decent amount of learning outside of everything you learn in school. A computer science degree tends to give you a lot of theory, and it gives you a theoretical foundation. And while I definitely think that's important, there are things you'll need to know for your actual tech interview. There are things you'll need to have on your actual resume, especially, when you're just a new grad and you have no real experience and nothing really shiny to show on your resume. You're going to need to add those shining things yourself. That's going to be like creating personal projects. You're going to be, writing code to create a web app or something else. That's something you're going to have to do in your spare time, right? And then when I talk about the tough interview prep, there's, something called LeetCode, which is this website that has coding interview problems, which are similar to the coding interview problems we see in, of course, a coding interview, right? So that the point I'm trying to make there is, I know people who, do 100, 200, 300 plus problems on this platform before they feel like, okay, I'm ready to start applying to jobs, right? And those questions, right, of course, they're doing in their own time. So this interview prep, and I should put a caveat here. It also depends on which company you're trying to get into, right? We know companies like Google, Facebook, they have a tougher hiring process. So people who are trying to get into those, they're doing more of this interview preparation, and of course, it's taking up more of their time. If that's not necessarily your goal and you just want to get a job as a software engineer, I don't think you have to do too much preparation outside of what you learn in school, just a little bit. So not something to be too scared of there. Just keep in mind kind of the higher you're aiming, or the higher of company you're aiming for, which has, a tough interview process, that preparation will have to be done in your own time, because you do learn a lot in your degree, but you also need to know a fair amount outside of that degree content that, will be asked in interviews. And just to give another example of what I mean by this kind of tougher interview scenario, before I got into tech, whenever I did interviews, I was mainly doing like criminology. Again, I have a criminology background, so criminology related interviews, or some entry level jobs like customer service. They were usually one interview, maybe a few, but from what I remember, I've usually only had to do one interview, right? Now I know with something, because I talked about criminology, with something like policing, the process is quite long, so that may even be longer than this. But to land my current tech job, right, the one I have right now, I had to do a recruiter call and initial interview, and then one day, 4 back-to-back interviews. So just in one day, I had 4 back-to-back interviews. So if we add that up, that's basically 6 interviews in total before I landed my job. I don't know how much of a norm this is in other industries. Again, my experience before was you do one interview, they either hire you or they don't. And in tech, it was surprising to me, how many kind of hoops you have to jump through in the interview process. And yeah, that's really, all the cons I have to point out. But I would like to conclude this video by saying, despite all of these cons, right, this is the best job I've ever had, hands down, period. I'm happy where I'm at. I'm happy with the job that I have. And I could see myself doing software engineering for the rest of my life, honestly. And I always like to encourage people that, hey, If this is a career you're considering, if this is something that seems interesting to you, try it out. See if you like it. I do believe, with hard work, with the right mindset, anyone can get into this field. So I definitely don't mean to make this video to discourage you in any way, but everything has its pros and cons at the end of the day, right? So we can't act like it's all sunshines and rainbows, even within software engineering, which, again, I don't see myself doing any other job. I love my job. There is still the side of the cons, and that's what I wanted this video to be about. But there are a lot of pros as well, and I talk about them all the time in other videos. So yeah, just wanted to conclude with that. Please do like, comment, and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.